Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Chief Demkiw, I'll touch on CBC Toronto.
Hi, Sean.
I wanted to ask you about your remarks today. They repeatedly touched on the issue of trust, and you were saying you're making a commitment here to build trust, specifically in communities who maybe feel that the Toronto Police have failed them in the past. I guess I'm just wondering, you felt the need to hit that note repeatedly. How are you going to do that in a 3-year term that is pretty short here?
So first of all, thank you for that question, and I really appreciate the opportunity that you present that question to highlight a fundamental key principle in policing, which is we police with the consent of our communities. And you heard remarks from the podium from other speakers about how the communities, the police are the community. In order for us to succeed in policing, trust is a fundamental thing we must always strive to improve and enhance. And quite frankly, no matter where we get to, that work is actually never complete. And that's a foundational principle in policing that we've spoken of since I've been a member of this police service. And I believe history will show that it's been something spoken of in democratic societies around policing for a very long time. So when I reflect on the things that I've learned over the course of 30 plus years in policing, in drawing up priorities, it was very clear to me that it's an important priority as Chief of Police to improve trust in, and importantly, I deliberately identified it as trust in and within the Toronto Police Service. We are an organization that is made up of community members. We are an organization that's made up of people who have lived experiences, and the lived experiences that are reflected in our communities are reflected within our service, within our members. So I made sure in developing my priorities that I focused our efforts around trust on community and within our Toronto Police Service.
So what are you able to point to after your first year as chief as specific points of evidence to suggest to the community that you've been able to make good on this promise?
Right. Well, listen, you can measure trust, thank you again, measure trust in many different ways. And we'll do what we need to measure trust and confidence the members of the community have in our service. And we'll use those metrics as they become available to make sure we understand if we're hitting the mark or if we need to iterate or develop what we're doing and change, or adjust course. And I think that's a very important thing I want to highlight is there's a number of things that we will do and I will do as chief that are, actions that people will be able to point to say that's new, that's different. But I want to be clear that we will be prepared to pivot and iterate as the community speaks to us. I spoke earlier today of lessons learned. And one of the important lessons that I learned in my development as a police leader is the need to seek to understand before seeking to be understood. And I think that's one of the very important principles that governs how I think about my engagement with members of our service and members of our communities in the spaces I visit where a community will meet with me, is I need to listen and learn. And in the listening and learning, I need to make sure that my actions are reflective of what I'm listening, what I'm hearing, and what I'm learning. And fundamentally, I will tell you that we are going to move towards a co-design, co-develop, co-deliver philosophy and practice in how we engage with members of our community and deliver community safety.
When I speak to people in the LGBTQ community, they're still feeling a bit hurt by that rage so many years ago. Have you got a way of mending a fence there?
Austin, again, thank you. And I really I paid attention to your coverage the other day. And I was, reflecting on the impact that event had on the community then, and the impact that event continues to have on the community. And I recognize and acknowledge that there continues to be trauma and concern and an expression of anxiety about my appointment. I mean, I definitely understand that. I acknowledge it. And I believe that what I need to do is to go into the community where possible to listen, learn, and come to understand how to bridge that gap. And I think there is a path, but the path requires me to acknowledge the impact my actions and the actions of others had that day. But importantly also, the impact our actions as an organization has had in the community at large, broadly, in the LGBTQ2S plus community, because it's not only about that day. It's about a relationship that has been formed over many, many years and has had a number of instances where trust and confidence has been shaken. And I'll be focusing not just on the events of that day that you reference in your coverage, but it's really important to focus on the entire relationship that exists between the service and the communities that have voiced concern.
Would you say that's a priority to go into that community now?
Not only is it a priority, it's something I commenced before today in the transition. I met with community leaders and had occasion to sit with community leaders to listen and understand. And I will tell you, there's been a number of things asked or discussed in those meetings, but one thing that came up was an issue of an apology. And I want to be very, very clear about this. I am absolutely prepared to do an unreserved apology. But now the time is for me to listen and understand what that apology should be. And I need to be informed through my engagement and discussions with the communities that have been impacted. So I think that's, when I've met with community leaders leading up to today in the LGBTQ2S plus community, that was something that was very frankly discussed and something I'll be working towards in the coming weeks and months. And looking for the right opportunity where we can come to a shared understanding, meaning me and members of the communities, on what an unreserved apology looks like that is authentic, genuine, and will assist in bridging the gap between the service and the communities impacted.
Chief, you're going to be going into this obviously knowing that there are certain communities that will not accept that apology and will never trust you. How does that change your approach to trying to build the trust?
Great question. Listen, I will be doubling down at every effort to build trust. I recognize there's a need. Many communities, have indicated a need for their Toronto police to do better and to build trust. And that's why it is a priority for me. That's why it's my first priority. And that became the first priority because I know there are many communities that would like to engage on this topic. And it's important and essential for us, as I said earlier, in how we police successfully, to police successfully in today's world. Trust is absolutely critical and essential and the foundation of our ability to succeed. So I will continue to work with everybody. All voices, as I said earlier today, will have space, including voices of dissent, including those who, as your question stated, may not feel that they're going to get there with us as it relates to trust. I will continue to engage with communities. I will continue to work with all those voices to do everything I can to better understand what the concerns are and take action, meaningful action, that I would hope would increase people's feelings of trust and confidence in us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask some questions today. Wendy Gillis from the Star. I just want to ask you, why do you need more time to issue an apology? This is, your first day, your first time approaching the media, and it has been many years since this happened. There's been a court ruling on it, human rights. What do you say to people who would say that you should already know what you need to apologize for?
Well, as I've indicated, Wendy, thank you for that. And I think that's a very important question you're asking. In order for me to apologize in a way that is authentic and received authentically and in a genuine way, I need to listen to the communities impacted to hear their perspectives. This is a very important thing that I've learned along the way, and I spoke of earlier today. Seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. And I will first seek to understand the perspective of the communities as it relates to the apology, amongst other things, of course. But as it relates to the apology, it's absolutely essential for me as the incoming chief and the new chief to take the time necessary to meet with communities and have conversation to understand what an authentic apology is, and recognizing that, as I said earlier, there's events that surround my activity at the Pussy Palace, but this is about a broader relationship and a history and a burden of history, frankly, that I need to address as chief that requires more dialogue.
I want to follow up on something you said earlier about taking a public health approach in your role. I know there was also a lot of comment today about how the Toronto Police Service will be asking for a budget increase. What do you say to people who would say, you know, there is sort of hypocrisy in that, in terms of taking a public health approach and yet also asking for more money for policing?
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for that. As it relates to a public health approach, I'd like to be really clear on this, is there are people that come into contact on occasion with the police who suffer from mental health concerns, drug addictions, and when they come into contact with police, we are not always what's required, but they come in contact with us. We must look at a suite of available services to help us ensure that people who are in need of help can get the help that they deserve. In a city like ours, who has the ability to bring together and harness multiple disciplines into providing services, particularly for people who need us the most, from a policing perspective, focusing with a public health lens and a public health approach is absolutely essential. We have long learned that enforcement is not the only option and often not the right option. And in cases where drug addiction, homelessness, and mental health are factors, there are other suites of care that need to be brought to bear. But sometimes the Toronto Police are the only service available 24/7. Sometimes it's us who are called when others can't respond. And we, in our organization as a police agencies, have to look at an available suite of care and think about our approach to how we prevent, intervene, and service people in need differently, and bringing a public health lens to some of our thinking and planning and activities is absolutely essential if we're going to provide the best possible care for people who are vulnerable.
Chief, if you, sorry, back here, you're speaking about listening to communities and being able to get out there and do what you can to mend fences. That's you personally. At the same time, you've got an entire service that will be serving under you. How do you go about doing that personally, but at the same time making sure that trickles down?
Sorry, I missed the last part of your question.
Making sure that that's implemented within the service itself.
Meaning the changes. Well, first of all, we're obviously communicating today what our priorities are. I'm actually leaving here to my first unit visit, where I'll have opportunity to engage with some really important people doing some incredible work, face-to-face, firsthand, to start the discussion in person about the priorities and how we're going to achieve and succeed. But you will see a lot more of me doing that with units across this organization, going to every single corner of this service, meeting with the most amazing women and men, sworn and civilian, who do incredible work keeping this city safe. I will be going into their workspaces, meeting with them, discussing priorities, discussing where we're going and how we're going to accomplish it together. And I will be meeting with communities and making sure that we are doing that across this organization so the community voices and perspectives can be heard and inform what we're doing. So we truly move towards a co-design, co-develop, co-deliver model with our communities as it relates to community safety.
How much time do you take to have those discussions, to listen, make sure it's implemented before there's a shift, I guess, into using that every day?
Well, this is a bit of work that's going to continue for the entire term I'm chief. So that we are hitting the ground running today, and we will continue running and doing everything we possibly can to accomplish on the mandate, and you will see deliverables early in the new year and throughout.
How old are you, Chief?
56.
Any more questions?
I did want to ask, public trust within policing, and I got the impression you were also talking about within the service itself. Can you talk about what you're going to be doing in the next year to address some of the issues that came out as it concerns sexual harassment within the police service itself?
So, Wendy, thank you for that. I want to be explicitly clear that my priority is improving trust in and within. I want to make sure that's very clear that within the Toronto Police Service is a priority of mine. I'm going to share something with you that you don't know, and that is that my wife was a member of the Toronto Police Service before she went on to be an incredibly successful executive. And I've had the opportunity to learn from her about what it's like to be a woman in policing and to be a woman in this police service. I've learned from her colleagues, and I've learned from colleagues I work with. So this is not only professionally important to me, it's actually personally important to me, and something that's been important to me for a very, very long time. We will continue forward on implementing the recommendations, of course, from the Deloitte report, the board's directions, 81 directions on police reform, and many other activities. We will continue in our efforts around leadership development. We will continue in our efforts to improve our promotional and recruitment and selection processes. There is a group of services that have come together to examine best practices, and we'll continue to participate and lead in that space. We are striking a steering committee early in January of multiple-discipline members within our service from an equity, inclusion, human rights unit, and others to help guide us on best practices and making sure we are moving forward as expeditiously and effectively as we can to make this workplace a place where everybody is welcome, everybody feels safe, and everybody has an opportunity to succeed.
Can I just follow up? I promise it's my last
Absolutely,
question.
it's a very important topic, so please do.
Well, I was actually just going to follow up to an earlier question about the budget. Can you talk about why the Toronto Police Service is going to be asking for more money in 2023?
So I'm not going to speak to specifics of what our ask is because that's a work in progress. But I will say this. We have a real need to make sure that we're focused on delivering the best possible service we can in our frontline service delivery. And our efforts are very focused on ensuring that we are able to respond to calls when people are in harm's way. The Auditor General's reports have been very, very clear on the need for us to make that a priority, and it's my commitment that I, as chief, will be driving that priority, and that'll be reflected in the work we do around the budget.
So is it your view then, Chief, that frankly the service is not meeting that standard right now, and that that's putting community safety at risk?
It's my view that the community has spoken succinctly what their expectations are of the Toronto Police, and one of them is we need to be able to respond when they call, and we're going to do everything we can to be as effective as we can be responding when people call.
One more question?
Let me just end it. There's no question. Say I really appreciate you coming here today. There's some important things that I'd like the City of Toronto to know, and I know you covered it earlier, but the priorities that have been set now will be guiding this police service forward, and I look forward to the engagement with the communities as we move forward. Thank you.